Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a video that is breaking down kind of an after action report of a class that I just took through the Task Collective, being their Trauma Med 1 class. And a couple goals with this AAR style video or after action report style video is A, letting people know who plan on taking this class know what they can expect, what to bring, just kind of setting your expectations for a class like that, and then also hopefully convincing you guys watching this video that this is definitely something you need to take, whether you take it through Task Collective or take it elsewhere. This is the type of training that everyone should have. So first of all, let me explain that part of things, why you need to take a class like this. So if you're watching this video or if you're subscribed to my channel, you probably are into firearms. Very likely you carry a firearm on what is hopefully a daily basis. And so you are equipped to be able to, hopefully not, but to potentially put holes in other people. And if you're in a situation like that, there's a very good chance that you or the people around you might end up with some holes in yourself. And you need to have a way of treating that. But on a more realistic level, there are things that we encounter in our day-to-day lives that could very, very quickly turn bad if you don't have basic life-saving techniques learned and have the tools to be able to apply those techniques. So things from motor vehicle accidents, workplace injuries, just kind of freak home accidents. The other day at the store where I work, someone was trying to take a knife out of the sheath of one of our customers, and for whatever reason decided to put his hand in the way of the blade, cut himself pretty good. And so anything from, somewhat major bleeds that are very readily treatable to life-threatening injuries are things that we can encounter on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure that most of you watching this have at least witnessed something like that happen and maybe called 911 or something like that. So it's something we realistically face, even aside from the firearms side of things. But with that firearm side of things too, if you're training, if you're doing anything like that, especially if you're training in the woods, as a lot of people do, at least in this immediate area, having the skills and ability to apply those skills could very readily save your own life or the life of your friends or loved ones. With that part out of the way, let's talk about what this class actually is, how that kind of applies to the basis that I just set for why you should know these things, and hopefully, again, inform people taking this class what to expect, what to bring, etc., etc. So first of all, I want to mention that this class was basically a private class set up by a group of people that are here local to me. Basically, a group of us had been wanting to do some medical training, and we were able to get enough people to actually bring them to us. So while you can absolutely get into one of the task collectives like actual organized open classes, if you have enough people in your immediate area, close enough hopefully to where the task collective is operating, you can have them come to you, and that can make things a little bit more convenient for a lot of you. Or if you're just kind of by yourself, you're looking for these classes, this is the type of class that Task Collective puts on a fairly regular basis, so that shouldn't be an issue either. But when we showed up at the class, we had these little workbooks provided to us. This allows you to take notes, be able to follow along with the presentation, and just get a better idea, depending on your learning style, of what is going on. Now, that being said, it is always a good idea, whatever class you're going to bring some sort of note-taking material and like a pen or a pencil. But in this case, I was able to kind of consolidate all of that onto this one thing. And that just made it easy to keep track of where we were, what was being covered, and little tidbits that I was able to draw in. Now, with pretty much all medical trauma classes, one of the main priorities that is going to be covered is bleeding. I know they brought up the statistics during the class, but massive hemorrhaging or massive blood loss is one of the leading causes of preventable death in the battlefield, and again in a lot of these like workplace injuries or motor vehicle accidents, things like that. People lose enough blood for their body to start shutting down and then eventually lose their life. So a lot of what is covered in this class is going to be geared towards stopping that blood loss through the use of many different tools depending on the location. Now, with the bleeding thing, again, depending on where the location is, it's going to go over what kind of stuff you need to be looking out for, how to treat stuff on different parts of the body. So if I have something on my abdomen or on my chest or on my head, Obviously, tourniquets aren't really something you want to apply in that situation, so understanding what type of tools are appropriate for different circumstances. And we kind of get all of that in the book with a little presentation before we go out and actually start doing practical applications. So they do a really good job of laying that foundation, getting everyone on the same page, understanding the basics before going out to the practical application portion, which is the majority of the class. Now, what I want to do is mention at least the instructor for my class. Adam was a very, very knowledgeable instructor. I know that he's going to be working a lot more with Task Collective, so that is obviously subject to change, but not for the foreseeable future as far as I'm aware. So the person who taught our course had been an EMT and paramedic in the civilian world prior to joining the Army and being a combat medic. Had plenty of real world experience on both ends of that in both the civilian and military world. And then he brought a ton of experience to this class. For what it's worth, this is not the first trauma class that I've taken. It's not the first medical class I've taken. I've been certified for as an instructor for American Red Cross for first aid, CPR, AED stuff. So I've already got a little bit of a foundation, and I also spent 2 years as a volunteer firefighter while I was in high school before I personally joined the military. So I've had a lot of basic life-saving technique stuff trained to me. However, the vast majority of that is in the civilian spectrum, or in the civilian sector, excuse me. And there's just a lot of different perspectives that I've gotten in every other class I've taken versus this class, where I have the perspective of someone who's both seen it from a lot of gun-related injuries or like shrapnel injuries and stuff like that from the military context, as well as all the civilian style stuff that I'd already gotten. So even if you've taken a basic level trauma class before, I would highly recommend taking this class as well, because again, even though I've taken multiple ones, there were still a lot of really good nuggets of wisdom that I was able to get. And even on top of that, all of this stuff is a perishable skill. And if you're not routinely practicing it, getting time, actually, putting on tourniquets, stuffing wounds, doing anything like that, you're going to lose it. And especially with the severity of a lot of the injuries that are potential out there, it's not something you want to be trying to remember how to do on the fly. You really want it ingrained into your kind of muscle memory, so you can just not go into autopilot necessarily, but just know how to do stuff, how to stuff wounds, how to put on pressure bandages, how to apply a tourniquet without having to sit there and remember how to do all that stuff. So when we got into the practical application portion of the class, we went over a lot of the different potential tools that are going to be available to us depending on how we have our own medical kit set up, or depending on what medical kits are available in the environment. So we went over pretty much all of the recommended tourniquets through organizations like TCCC, and then there was the civilian version of TCCC, which I've already forgotten, but it's like TCECC or something like that. So basically all of the approved tourniquets that you're going to run into, like the Cat 7s, some of the SWAT Ts, again, a pretty long list of different tourniquets out there. Pros and cons of each one, how to use each one, how to apply them, where to apply tourniquets, and got just a good cross section of the available tools out there for tourniquets, so that we could make up our own minds of what is going to be best applicable to our own needs, whether that be everyday carry or tactical medical kits, vehicle medical kits. And it just gave us a good exposure across the breadth of those available tourniquets on the market. We did also cover pressure bandages and the different pros and cons of some of the pressure bandages, again, on the market. With pressure bandages, obviously depending on where the wounds are, those are going to be more of a priority than tourniquets. So again, something you still need to be aware of. And just from my own experience, when I first started carrying medical supplies, all I carried was a tourniquet, and I thought, I'm good to go. That covers me. Anything I need to do, got that tourniquet. And someone asked me, well, what if you get shot in the shoulder? What are you going to do? And I thought, okay, maybe a tourniquet's not all I need. Maybe I need pressure bandages, gauze, and all that stuff. So again, getting exposure to the different pressure bandage options on the market is a really valuable thing. Then we started getting into gauze and the difference between just standard gauze and some sort of quick clot or C-lock style gauze, which has its own coagulant stuff. Again, stuff that they go way deeper into the class, not something I want to get super in depth into here in this video, but the pros and cons of each of those. And then we started getting into actually applying some of these tools onto both like little dummy mannequin style stuff and then onto each other. So spent quite a while learning the proper technique for stuffing wounds. Kind of not, and I'll say I had a superficial understanding of stuffing wounds prior to this class. This class gave me a much better idea. Basically, it's not just a matter of shoving something into a wound, but understanding what is going on in the wound and how to best apply that stuff to that specific wound. Not just filling a hole, but understanding what is going on in that hole and what needs to actually be addressed in there. So understanding the why behind the what. And again, that was something I really appreciated in this class, is overall just the why behind what it is you're doing. So we did a lot of stuffing wounds. They had these little like silicone dummy things that we would had different styles of wounds on that we were able to kind of feel, understand, and then get practice, a lot of practice, stuffing gauze into wounds, and again, understanding the why there. Then we got into the pressure bandages, how to apply the different pressure bandages depending on the part of the body, the style of wound, things of that nature. And then we got into applying tourniquets. And again, all of this is just real simple practical application, getting time, getting reps, applying these tourniquets before getting into the kind of the stress-induced scenario portion of the class, which is usually the most fun and the most challenging. So once everyone had a good fundamental understanding of how to use each of the tools, we've got a good rapport going with the instructor and with the other students in the class, then we got into the more stress-induced practical application of the course. So basically, depending on who was going at a given time, one of us would have to do something to either kind of start getting ourselves winded, whether that be doing burpees or anything like that, just kind of doing laps around the inside of the hangar where we were doing this class. Just something to kind of get our heart elevated before coming into a scenario and having to address what was going on. And this was a really valuable thing in two ways. So first of all, you're coming into a situation blind, being told what is going on as you're coming into it. And B, now you're really starting to stress the mental aspect of everything where, okay, yeah, I understand the fundamentals. I know how to go through the motions of applying these tourniquets, applying these pressure bandages, etc. However, when you start adding stress, whether that be physical exhaustion or anything else, now you're really finding where your failure points are psychologically of being able to now do these things and think through the process and remember back to the things that you were taught. Now, the instructors did a really good job of finding everyone's failure points in there and not pushing things too crazy hard, but scaling everything to each person's individual ability and making sure everyone is going to get the most out of this class. So, for example, in some of the footage you'll see, or maybe have already seen depending on how this goes, I came into a situation and with basically unknown injuries, I'm having to consult in the first situation, a more willing victim that I'm trying to help. They're being very helpful, very communicative, telling me what is going on so I can address those issues. And then later in the class, as things get more difficult, now a victim who is not cooperative at all for one reason or another, and causing me to now have to almost physically restrain this person while applying aid to them, just so that again, it's just another level of stress, another level of difficulty, and again, helps me find some failure points. So for example, there were multiple times where when I'd be going through a scenario, I'd be going through my kind of order of operations of trying to address and find wounds, that I would find a non-life-threatening wound and start to apply medical aid to that before searching for actual life-threatening wounds. So for example, like a stab wound to the shoulder, but I missed a gunshot wound to the leg or something like that. Not the exact scenario. Again, scenarios are going to vary from person to person. But basically, I'm just stuffing a Band-Aid on something essentially while someone is potentially bleeding out from their femoral artery. So things of that nature, stuff that just through the induction of stress, I was able to find some failure points like that, and it gave me something to be mindful of and to practice for future classes or just whatever situation I may find myself in where I'm having to actually apply these skills. Now, taking this class, there were several people for whom this was their very first medical class. There were a couple people who this was their second medical class, and there were quite a few of us who had taken several other medical classes before, and I can say confidently that not only myself, but everyone else in the class took a lot away from this class. And again, having someone who had the more military experience of combat trauma gave me little nuggets of wisdom that I would not have gotten elsewhere. I'm going to save most of those so that you guys have to take classes like this to get those nuggets of wisdom, because I really do think it's a valuable thing to do. But anyway, all that said, all that to say that anyone taking this class can get something out of it. Now, again, this is their level 1 class. There is stuff that is not gone over in this class. There are levels above this where you start getting into more intense styles of situations and different more advanced levels of combat medicine and how to fix those issues. But again, this is a very inviting, a very welcoming class to start with instructors that know very well what they're doing. So as you can imagine, this is a class that I highly recommend. And I've taken now 2 classes with the Task Collective. I took one of their carbine classes about 6 to 8 months ago, and then I just took this medical class, and I can tell you confidently I'm going to be taking some more classes with these guys. I've been very impressed with their presentation style, their knowledge base, and just kind of, again, the why behind what they're doing I think is pretty cool, and so I appreciate that. I'm willing to spend a lot more of my time and money with these guys, and I can confidently recommend them to anyone else looking for this style of training. Now, that being said, I know a lot of people watching these videos are not in the Pacific Northwest, not in Oregon or Washington, so I'm sure they would agree with me in saying find someone local to you. This training is important enough that's not like you should take it with any one specific person. Take it wherever you can, because this is stuff that we all should be able to know, and the more people that know it, the safer we are as communities, and the more likely we are to help our fellow citizens in our areas. Again, just a super valuable thing to know. So I'm going to have the contact information for the Task Collective down below, their website, their Instagram, and all that. They're really active on Instagram, posting their classes, posting pictures from classes to let you guys know what to expect. Their website has a good layout of what kind of stuff is coming up on their schedule. So definitely check out both of those. If you have any questions for them, their contact info is going to be available there. If you have questions for me about the class or anything like that, feel free to throw those in the comment section down below. If you guys want, feel free to check out my Teespring store. This is my new "Do You Even Recce Bro" shirt. Just figured with all the hate going on in the Recce community, some of us do actually care about that stuff. So if you want to let your friends know where you stand, definitely check out one of those shirts. But I also want to say thanks to my patrons for helping to make videos like this one possible. My various medical kits that I've been practicing with and using have all been coming from the support that I get over on Patreon. So definitely check that out. I post all my content over there early. We have some exclusive content, live streams, Discord server, all that stuff. So if any of that sounds interesting, definitely check that out. But as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.